Hi everybody, welcome back to Geezer Rider. In this, it being the first in a series of videos about the dealership, we will dive into the pros and cons of dealing with the dealership for a couple of different things. This video will focus on basically the dealership overall, and then we'll have subsequent videos that deal with buying your motorcycle from a dealership, maintaining your motorcycle dealership, and buying your parts and accessories at the dealership. There are a lot of sites that have devoted time to this subject. It's very divisive. You're going to find opinions on both sides. We try and go a little bit down the middle here and arm you with all the information. So I'm neither somebody that's going to bang on the dealership with a sledgehammer and call them a bunch of crooks or anything like that. And I'm also not a cheerleader for the dealership, right? You know, there's good and bad with everything. So let's get right into it. When I say dealership, my definition of the dealership is a manufacturer's dealership. So that is where you can go and buy a brand new bike sold by, you know, any big name, and I'll just throw a couple out there in no particular order: Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Harley Davidson, Indian, etc. The list goes on. I'm not excluding anybody deliberately, just giving you an idea that I mean, you know, anybody that sells a motorcycle. And therefore you're buying a bike that could be financed by the factory, would be warranted by the factory through that dealership. All the options are available there. So that is my definition, working definition of a dealership for the purposes of this video, this discussion. So, you know, let's start with the dealership as a corporate entity of some kind. It could have been started by enthusiasts. It could have been started solely as a business venture, but its goal, in order to keep doing whatever its original motivation for being opened was, its goal is to keep its doors open, right? And keep doing what it's doing and make a profit. It needs to make money. So it needs enough to pay its bills. It needs enough to pay its people. And they would like to have a little profit, either to put back into the place or open yet another dealership, or hey, maybe these people actually would like to retire one day, right? So, you know, put a human face on this. When we talk about, you know, the decline of brick and mortar stores, and if you watch the heated gear segment, you know, I stated for each line of apparel, you know, each type of heated garment that you really would like to, and this is true of boots, helmets, heated gear, you know, anything you put on your body, and a lot of things you put on your bike, you really want to go and have a look at it, lay hands on it, test it out if you could somehow. And oftentimes the dealership is where that's going to happen. So, you know, that's one of the pros of the dealership. You go there and you can see what you want to see. But, you know, let's just talk about the human factor. You know, I hear people say, I don't like going in a dealership because a salesman just, you know, latches on to me and won't leave me alone. And, you know, I'm just trying to look at some bikes and feel my way around. Well, that's the person's job. They're there to start that relationship. And you're going to hear this word as a recurrence, you know, no matter what kind of purchase you're doing for your motorcycle, the relationship. So that salesman, you know, obviously they're trying to endear you to themselves if they're a commission-based entity. But they also are trying to get a feel for what you like so they can steer you in the right direction, right? They don't know you yet. They shouldn't pretend to already know what you need, but you know, it's not all malice, right? There's not always nefarious reasons for, you know, these people trying to get your contact information. You know, you could think you want a new bike and the guy gets a trade on a bike in the, you know, that's in the riding segment that you're interested in, and the previous owner got it, took it home, had an unfortunate circumstance, couldn't ride it anymore and had to sell it back to the dealership, or decided it wasn't actually the type of bike for the riding they wanted to do and turned it in with 40 miles on it. this stuff happens. If the salesman at the dealer has had the opportunity to speak to you and jot down your information, they can call you at that opportunity. So there are pluses for going to the dealer. There are some items that only exist at the dealer. Well, what might those items be? Sometimes they are items from the manufacturer that are exclusively made available only through the dealership. That's becoming less common, I think, as online presences increase. But, there might be a trinket, bauble, part, accessory, whatever that's only available from the dealership. Or from the manufacturer. So, what if I could get that same thing online, right? Don't I want to know what I'm getting? Wouldn't it be nice to go up and lay hands on something? So I'll give you an idea of what I mean by that in a very specific segment. And I talk about Harley a bit only because that's the bike I currently own. If you watch the intro to Geezer Rider, I've ridden, all different kinds of brands. So the fact that I keep bringing up a Harley or a particular model Harley is just because I have lucid examples of that to share with you, not because I'm championing the brand or the model necessarily. So back to the dealership. I would like to, even though I have heated gloves, obviously by the heated gear segment, I would like to have heated grips. I might have not packed my saddlebags with my heated gear yet, and I'm out on a cool day. And, we all know the drawbacks of the heated grips from the heated gear segment. They can only do just so much, but it'll be nice to have them there. Barrier to entry is a little pricey. And there are some aftermarket manufacturers that sell heated grips, but for the Harley, for like the touring line, the ability to hide the wiring inside the bars and everything is pretty limited to the Harley branded accessory. And yes, that's infuriating because somebody else makes it for Harley, and I don't need. Maybe you don't want skulls on your heated grips or something. You would gladly buy from the company that makes those grips for Harley, but that's an aside. So the fit and finish and quality of the heated grips for my Harley touring bike really are only available from the dealer, from the manufacturer. So I have mentioned also in the heated glove segment that I have extremely large hands. Not that my fingers are that big, but my palm is really large, apparently based on the size glove I have to buy. So I need a larger diameter grip. And you would be surprised how many grip manufacturers don't even list the diameter of the grip. And that's very important to me. It makes the difference between a comfortable ride and a cramped hand for me. So I like the ability to actually, wrap my hand around the grip and check it out. It would also be nice to see how well it heats up. And while even the dealer doesn't always necessarily have the grips mocked up to heat up, sometimes they have them mocked up on a handlebar that you can put your hand on there. So that's important to me. And while I might be able to buy those grips online, the price point is generally kind of even. And I might buy something like that because of a variety of factors that go along with it. One, I lay hands on it. Two, it's not an uncomplicated product. It's not the most difficult accessory you're ever going to install, but you might need some guidance or something, and the dealer could help you. Yes, they would rather pay for you they would rather you pay them to install it, but that's a different video. So, what's the advantage of the dealership here? Hey, I can lay hands on it. If there's any problems with it, I can take it back to a physical entity and explain what's wrong with it instead of this back and forth online and everything. And some places, this is a note of caution, will not take back electric components, and heated grips classify as an electric component. It doesn't always have to be part of an ignition system, be classified as an electric component. You develop a relationship with a dealership's sales staff. You develop it with the people that sell their parts and accessories and apparel, and you develop it with their service area, right? The people that are going to do maintenance and repairs on your bike. So you may get some special dispensation. I'm not going to say that's always true or ever true, but I've had it happen to me, where somebody said, you know what, you come in here, I know you're a good customer, I know you didn't screw up the installation, this is just something bad, we're not going to, make you buy another set, we'll try and do some kind of RMA or something like that. That relationship is not something you can build up and build on online. They can look at your purchase history and see that you're a good customer, but their rules are their rules. Chances are their manager's gone home for the day. You work till 9 to 5, and you got on at 7 o'clock to talk to somebody, and this guy needs to escalate, or gal needs to escalate to their manager to solve your problem or get back to you the next day. You walk into the dealership with your stuff, you're talking to somebody. Might not change the outcome, but at least you've got that face to face, that eye to eye, and they know that you might only have one negative experience, or you might have more than one negative experience where you finally say, hey, 1 strike you're out, or 3 strikes you're out, whatever, I'm not coming back here, I'm not buying that sort of thing from you ever again. So this is a good jumping in point to reviews. And you're online, you already know, bad news travels fast. It's like the news. If it bleeds, it leads. So people are going to be much more ready to condemn or convict than they are to compliment or cheer or applaud, right? I know I'm guilty of it too. If I have a great customer experience, I have to really go out of my way to leave, good feedback. I mentioned during the Heated Gear series, I had a negative experience with one online retailer. It was basically false advertising. I caught him in it. Clearly, there was no wiggle room, no way out of it, and I still had to push my way to a refund where I was inconvenienced and, lost time, and which I put a value on my time, and you probably put a value on your time as well, and it delayed my overall project and delayed getting a couple of videos out to you guys. So, the online is fraught with those perils. So again, they may have, analytics or statistics that show you're a valuable customer or whatever, but, they are bound by certain internal rules, which are usually inflexible. You usually have to spend a few days of escalation with most places to get something resolved, especially electrical components. So I think we've kind of gone through that. We talked about the purchase. So, this is, like I said, there's going to be several videos regarding what you do at a dealership. So, we'll talk about vehicle purchase. If you go to a manufacturer's dealership, you get to buy a new bike with a manufacturer's warranty. Yes, there are some circumstances where you can go to some kind of dealership and, they know how to do the paperwork and they pass on the manufacturer's warranty to you. Not just any warranty, not their warranty, but a manufacturer's warranty. Why is that important? That's important, and we'll use the illustration of a touring bike again. I like to put a lot of miles on my bike if I can. I am going to hit one of the big name manufacturer dealerships somewhere along my route. It won't be too far off the beaten path. Even if I had some catastrophic failure and had to tow it there, or I rented a U-Haul and threw it in the back and got it to the nearest dealer for repair. The chances of, some other dealership having multiple locations or having some kind of reciprocity with another dealer elsewhere where you just so happen to be are pretty low. I'm not going to say that's the sole factor in influencing any bike purchase, but it's something to keep in mind. And let's talk about the new rider, the beginner, this is your first bike. There are tons of sites that have tons of videos that talk about how to pick your first bike, starting riding, whether your first bike should be new or used. So, I won't really get too deep into that. Again, we're about content and not necessarily production values, limited visual aids here, etc. But I think for somebody just getting started with, that brand, whatever brand it is they buy, or that particular segment of motorcycle riding, maybe it's adventure touring, maybe it's cross-country touring, maybe it's a sport bike, or a standard cruiser, what have you, that that relationship with the dealership and the ability to ping information off of somebody that's not biased can help you out. Another area that's of interest is if you develop a relationship with the dealership service department. They charge some money for their services. They have to buy the stuff. They have a little bit of markup on it. They have to pay, their labor rate is where it is because they have to pay their people. They have, a mortgage payment on the building or a lease payment to the landlord, whatever. It's not, they're not always the Grinch. They're trying to make a living and they're trying to do something they like. So you do a few maintenance items with the maintenance department. You get to know the service manager or whatever, and you've decided to do your own maintenance, or you want to try it, and you've looked at a couple of YouTube videos or some videos online, and there's a common trend on those repair videos or accessory added videos where somebody is like, oh, I didn't have any specialty tools and I got the whole thing done in 5 minutes. Another guy comes back or gal comes back and says, I got it all done in 4 minutes, and it's all total BS. It's a 45-minute job. There's just people thumping their chest, and maybe it's a joke. I don't know at this point, but there are a lot of people that are not without skills. I mean, they're talented. They have more than basic skills in order to perform those repairs and accessory additions. Who have I've talked to personally and say, yeah, that's complete BS. It takes longer than that. So what's your litmus test? How do you separate the wheat from the chaff in regard to that? Well, if you have a relationship with the service manager at your dealership, they have a book where they can go online because they have to be able to give you an estimate, and it says it takes 0.73 hours to complete that task. And maybe they round up to the nearest quarter, maybe they round up to the nearest full hour, and they will give you a quote, and they will say it costs this much for parts, it costs this much for adhesives or oils or light bulbs, and it costs this much for the labor. So you can get an idea of what the endeavor should take. And chances are the longer it takes, the more complex it is, and you can use that as a gauge as to whether it's something you really want to get into. If they've got 2 hours on the books for a skilled trained technician, somebody that's been trained, taken the factory training curriculum, and they've got 2 hours slotted for this is a complex task, or it's a lot of little easy tasks. So if you're just starting out and getting to do your own maintenance, that might not be something you want to get into. And I'm not telling you to abuse the dealership and call them for every little thing, because their time has value too. Your time has value, their time has value. But if you get kind of stuck, it's a resource. I don't think you're going to go to an online entity and get that same information or that honest assessment all the time. So I'm not here to say that the dealership is evil incarnate, and I've shown a couple of pluses, why you might want to buy a bike from them, why you might want to buy accessories from them, and why you might want to do your maintenance from them. That being said, not all of the negative reviews are just somebody with an axe to grind, somebody with a judge. Some of them are legitimate concerns. And I hate to call out specific dealerships or manufacturers about a problem, but I will give you a very specific example of where, things at a dealership did not go well or did not go as planned for a number of people. And it's a unique circumstance, but hey, it happened. So Polaris owned Victory motorcycles. And there were a fair number of dealerships carrying Victory during the chopper craze. They carried all kinds of other brands too, a lot of these places. I'm not sure I ever saw a dealership that only sold Victory motorcycles. Maybe they existed. And maybe it was somebody that sold other Polaris products and only other Polaris products. But anyway, when Polaris killed the Victory line, there were a lot of techs that just left. They went on to find their next gig because they knew they weren't going to be working anymore. And not all those people were really happy about it. So there were people with their bikes stranded at the dealership. I'm not sure when Polaris came out and said that they would continue to provide manufacture parts for those bikes for 10 years from their date of manufacture, but they came out with that later. And a lot of people really got jammed up. So that's a really unique circumstance, but one to think about. Another is if the dealership doesn't have legs, if they don't have the financial wherewithal to weather the off season, or where we're at now, for example, where there's a decline in ridership and a decline in new bike purchases at the moment, while the market transitions. Guys my age are starting to age out of riding over time. Maybe they're looking to do something different. You know, they get a classic car instead of a bike. Maybe there's a lot of people, you know, the young riders aren't entering the market segment because they look at the cost of a bike and they say, hey, that's a lot of Uber rides or subway tokens or what have you. And, you know, they look at it more as a toy or a luxury item than, you know, a type of basic transportation or even a continuing source of fun for them. It's just not the way they're categorizing at the moment. So the market is trying to reposition itself, and it's taken a toll on dealers that haven't planned for that rainy day, or they just don't have that kind of income for the dealership. So what happens there? Well, kind of like the Polaris thing, things get shaky, you know, they start cutting back people's hours, you know, maybe the healthcare and dental and the eye benefits, you know, take a turn. And then you got to wonder, you know, do I have the same enthusiasm from my, you know, the maintenance department that I had in, you know, when times were good for them? You know, is the best tech working on my bike, or did they promote the guy that did the washing and detailing of bikes, you know, after the maintenance was done? I think that most people, most motorcyclists in general are pretty honest and decent people. And I think they, you know, understand the gravity of you getting your bike back in safe working order. But, you know, think about this when you're choosing who to establish that relationship with. Do they just have the one dealership? And that could be fine. You know, maybe this is your hometown dealership and, you know, you guys live 5 miles apart. So that could be okay. But maybe they're just one dealership and they're only in it, you know, is for the business. They're not, you know, the love of riding either was never there or is long since gone. They're a multi-location dealership and they're going to have to shutter a couple of dealerships and let people go. You know, this is all very negative and I hate going here. This isn't the purpose of the channel. But what I'm trying to do is get you to think about, you know, if I choose the dealership route, these are things that I should be interested in. I don't have an aversion going to the dealership for certain things. Sometimes it's just a matter of time. We mentioned your time has value. I put value on my time. I'm getting ready to go on a trip, and I just don't want to do all these things myself and doing the reading and the research and watching the videos and figuring out what is a realistic time to get this done. Do I really need specialty tools? You know, I don't have a lathe or a mill. I can't just fabricate the tool that I need. And it's not always readily available for purchase. And I don't want to be completing maintenance or an accessory addition, you know, the day before my 8-day trip or my 2-day trip or any, you know, overnighter, for example. You want to make sure that the job is done right, and you want a day to putz around close to home and make sure that everything went well. So I'll take it to the dealership and let them do it. And yeah, I have to pay more than if I did it myself, but they warranty the work. Most places do. And this is something when you're researching what dealership you're going to buy from. What are their policies? Nobody likes to read fine print, but the fine print is important, especially when it comes to a bike. If you're in a car and you lose power and the worst happens, you're in traffic and you're in the, you know, the middle of a 5-lane road or middle of an 8-lane road, and you lose power and you're slowing down too fast and you get rear-ended, it's a bad day. Nobody's happy. If that happens on your bike, that's a completely different story. So You want to go to a safe place where you have a relationship and you know that things are going to be done right. If you do it yourself, you also want that to be the case. So what else is there about the dealership? We talked about laying hands on things, being able to try on a helmet. Maybe they only carry helmets from the manufacturer. Maybe they carry other people's helmets as well, gloves, accessories, etc. That stuff is all such a personal fitment that, you know, you're at some point you're going to buy something that just doesn't work for you if you buy it online because you couldn't try it on first, right? Or you couldn't talk to somebody that bought it also and said, hey, I'm a large and it fit me like an extra large, or I'm a large and it fit me like a medium. Or, hey, I found that, you know, I bought this jacket, but they didn't account for riding position and the back of the jacket is too short and leaves your waist or your tailbone exposed, right? You know, you got plumber's crack hanging out in the cold back there. So, you know, that's an advantage to the dealership. And the overall of this, you know, we're getting a little circular here, is don't just count them out because the current fad is to beat up the dealership. And I don't care what manufacturer's site or what manufacturer's dealership it is, or, you know, and this is the case, you know, with a lot of other brands, like, you know, not Harley, where they'll sell multiple brands of bikes at one location. You know, I've heard people say, oh, well, I'm not going to go to a dealership that sells 4 different brands of bikes because that means their techs only know a quarter of the knowledge about one of the 4 brands that they sell. Maybe, or maybe they have, you know, 4 techs and each guy has been, you know, educated to the point where he's the subject matter expert in one of the brands and he knows how to work through lesser jobs, you know, less complicated jobs on the other brands, and vice versa for the other techs. You just don't know until you talk to them, and they'll generally be pretty honest with you about their credentials and should be able to provide them if you ask, if you're that kind of person and you want to see. Another example, and I'm using Harley again, but just because this is another big one, more expensive purchases, right? And very important purchases, like a seat. Replacement seats can range anywhere from, I've seen as cheap as like $80 up to, you know, $1,000 or more, depending on, you know, where they're coming from and what they're equipped with. Well, why would a seat cost, you know, $1,000, $800, $900? Well, maybe it's a heated seat. So you want to know that this thing is comfortable and fits you right. And a lot of the Harley dealerships actually have demo seats. It's the seat that you're going to buy. It just has orange labeling into the pleather, leather, or plastic, or whatever's vinyl, whatever's covering the seat, that says demo. And they'll let you take this thing and bolt it on your bike and ride it around a little bit and try it. I don't know, you know, how the program works, if you just get to go around their parking lot or they let you use it for a couple of days. There's no way to get that demo stuff off of there unless you put a cover on the seat or recover the seat. So they're probably feeling they're pretty safe, that, you know, you're not going to run away with it, and you probably have to sign some kind of waiver release form or something. But you know, that is a invaluable service where you're going to be able to make sure that seat fits you right. And you know, want to talk about a personal decision: seat width, seat height, how the padding is, how far forward you are on the bike. You know, is your crotch up against the tank? Is it forcing your tailbone back into the back of the seat pocket? Is there something firm in the bottom of the seat near the seat pocket that's poking up into your tailbone at the end of a long ride? You feel like you're going to be in traction in the hospital. Is it too mushy? Is it too hard? You know, all those things. And that I have made online purchases for seat before, and it was just a white knuckle at the price point I bought it on, just hoping that it worked out. And where I bought it from had a fairly liberal return policy. But again, you know, boxing something up, and a lot of times they're like, yeah, we'll take it back and we'll refund your money, but you have to pay return shipping. We sent you a perfectly good seat. If you didn't do your research and it doesn't work for you, too bad, so sad. They're not all like that. Sometimes you have options, but be prepared for that. So doubling back to, you know, the overall of the dealership, and we're gonna dive into, again, this is the first video in several, so this has just been kind of an overview of the dealership in general. They're not evil incarnate. They don't all have your best interest at heart, and there's really no way for you to be able to tell where they are at the point in time you want to use them for whatever it is you want to use them for, right? What's the status of their sales floor? What's the status of their parts and accessories department? What's the status of their maintenance, you know, their service department, and how sound are they overall, and, you know, are their employees happy? That is going to vary over, you know, even a 24-month time frame, and you're just going to have to do your research. Again, I say in a lot of these videos, you've got homework to do. I'm not always going to recommend a specific thing or necessarily tell you how to do it. And this is another one of those things where there's just no replacement for your homework, and you can still wind up with a negative experience. You know, people are human, systems are flawed, and sometimes poop happens. But, you know, in general, it's not impossible to have a good experience at the dealership. Subsequent videos to this, we'll talk about buying parts and accessories from the dealership. We'll talk about buying apparel from the dealership, and we'll talk about maintenance from the dealership in more specific terms. But I hope this gave you an overview of what's to come, and that you found the information valuable to you. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of these videos, please hit the subscribe button. You'll get a notification when we put out additional content. And as always, we welcome your comments and constructive criticism, and we'll try and get back to you when we can on that. Thanks. Ride safe. Namaste.